to Free Speech Nation. Top Gear presenter James May found himself at risk of being cancelled earlier this month when he dared to challenge Pride Month. So he went on to X, formerly known as Twitter, to argue that the rows of LGBT symbols over Regent Street could be seen as authoritarian and oppressive. He labelled the display too much bunting. And he went on to say that the excessive flag displays bear more than a passing resemblance to those which he blames for starting the Second World War. So, does he have a point, or is Pride and all the hard-fought-for rights that it celebrates worthy of grand displays and month-long celebrations? So joining me to discuss is campaigner, commentator and former Conservative Special Advisor Charlie Rowley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Charlie, how do you feel about the Progress Pride flag, the one that we've seen endlessly throughout Regent Street?
Well, ultimately, as boring as it sounds, it's a decision for the council and the local authority, I think, to make. But I think in terms of the flag itself, it's symbolic. It symbols the unity, diversity, inclusivity for a particular time of year, for a short period of time, to celebrate, I think, one day in the calendar usually, which is Pride, which is something that I think we as a nation should be proud of, the rights that we give to people, to be able to love who you love, to be able to marry the person you love. I think that is something that is a good thing and should be celebrated.
So let's just go quickly on to James May's tweet. He's comparing it, I suppose, in a roundabout way to Nazi Germany. Not directly, but he's talking about it seems authoritarian. And a lot of people have observed when they see those flags on Regent Street, and there's so many of them. I was recently in Dublin, and it's absolutely everywhere, and people feel like it's too much. Do you have any sympathy with that view?
Not particularly. I mean, obviously, if you don't like the flag, you know, don't look at it. But I think because it's only there for a short period of time, I think the language that James used could have been worded better. Okay. I don't think it's, you know, as he described.
So you've talked about people can just look away. They can't really, can they? I mean, it's in every shop, it's in every store. It is absolutely ubiquitous. But to go back to your point about it's a flag that represents unity, hard-won rights and all of those kind of things. I mean, my view is that that's certainly what the original rainbow flag represented, the six-stripe flag that was designed in 1978. I think the Progress Pride flag represents something very, very different. This is the one with the extra chevrons for trans rights, the black stripe, the brown stripe for racial minorities, the intersex circle, this very cluttered sort of display. And that, I think, has become associated with a particular ideological movement, the intersectional movement, the identity-obsessed movement. That's a very divisive thing. So should, on principle, I understand what you say about the council, they can make their own decision. Should the council, on principle, be flying a flag so ubiquitously that actually is incredibly divisive and doesn't even have support necessarily within the gay community?
So that is the million-dollar question, I suppose. And
yes.
When you want to try and move things forward, when you want to, you know, make sure that as a society people recognise pride and the equality for people who are, you know, gay, lesbian, trans, bisexual, and where those rights weren't there previously, where it was a crime, and where actually it is still a crime around the world, but in the UK, obviously, it is not. What you don't want to do is, when you want to try and educate people, is to have the confusion and the constant rebranding. You know, big brands obviously
yes.
keep their branding, and people associate and they know whether it's Coca-Cola or McDonald's or something like that. Now, I'm not, you know, comparing the Pride movement to a big organisation, but if you keep changing things, then it loses actually people's attention when you need to be educating people more.
So would the argument that you're insinuating there be that we should go back to the original rainbow flag?
Yes, I think it does its job. I think that's what it represents. Obviously, you know, there are, as I was doing my research before, there are many different flags to represent yes. different parts of the, you know, the community.
Yes, it's endless.
So that is, you know, for them, and that is fine if that is, you know, what it's there. You can't change it. But I think if you want to try and, as I say, progress the issue to educate people, to make sure that everybody feels inclusive and something that everybody can celebrate in, I think one flag that everybody can easily identify with is probably enough, and that is the original.
That's the original flag,
yes.
Right? So, if we're sort of agreeing then that the Progress Pride flag represents something very different, something that is very controversial, and something that a lot of people find actually quite anti-gay, then, you know, at this stage, it would be wise, wouldn't it, just to get rid of that in public? I mean, I'm with you that people can fly their flags, whatever flag you want. I don't think that it should be flown on people's behalf without their consent necessarily.
I see that, but look, you know, I don't have a particular, you know, problem with it. I don't you know, there are so many ills in the world. To get obsessed and lose sleep over a flag is not something that I will do.
No, I don't think it's a flag, though, Charlie. I think what it is because the ideology behind the Progress Pride flag is the same ideology that shames gay people for being attracted to members of their own sex. It's the same ideology that is responsible for young people at the Tavistock Clinic who are probably same-sex orientated being put onto the pathway to irreversible surgery. You know, quite very overtly anti-gay things. I know a lot of gay people who hate that flag and think it represents everything that the gay rights movement was not about. So given the severity of that, not just the fabric and the colours, which I think are quite ugly and garish anyway, so as a matter of taste, I think they should get rid of them, but just in terms of the fact that it represents such a potentially pernicious ideology. That's the point, I think.
Well, I think, no, I do think, look, you know, and there is division within the community as well. You know, what was you know, the Progress originally for gay people. There is a conflict now between whether it's gay spaces, whether it's single-sex spaces, whether it's men-only spaces, whether it's women-only spaces. That conversation has come to the fore. So I think it is becoming increasingly difficult, actually, as a community to be able to be united as one anyway and have one flag that represents all of those individuals.
That's a good point because the solution is apparently to throw as much onto the flag as possible. They even added a symbol for autism. Someone else added a symbol for sex workers, and it becomes cluttered and pointless, doesn't it? Whereas actually the rainbow, there's a purity about that. It means everyone.
Yes, I think that's right. That's why I agree with you. But I think what we have to make sure that we do, whatever the flag is, and whatever colour it is, and whatever shape or size, that is one thing. But when you actually see in society things like the horrors at the Tavistock Centre, when you see people who are posing as trans, effectively, if you're in Scotland and you identify as a trans woman.
You're talking about the likes of Isla Bryce.
Isla Bryce, exactly. No, we have to make sure that we call those out. Everybody in society, everybody in that community calls that out for what it is and says that this is ridiculous and actually that should not be happening and that's inappropriate. But, a flag is a flag.
Here's another question, though. Is it too much? Is it, there's been a study recently, a poll in America, showing that support for same-sex marriage is going down. You talked about there being a Pride Day, but now it's a month. And there are different Pride months depending where you are in the world, so it's always going on. And, when I was in Dublin recently, I have to say, I found it annoying because it was absolutely everywhere. And is there a risk that there's a backlash? Then there's pedestrian crossings are being painted with the pride flag because apparently gay people struggle to cross the road without these colours. I mean, isn't it just, it's too much, it's annoying?
Well, people make up their own mind, I suppose. I mean, I don't...
Doesn't annoy you?
No, I honestly don't lose sleep over... I mean, because there are so many things going on in the world.
Yes.
I've no issue with, if for example, a police station wants to fly the flag at a police station, if a police car is draped in the colours of the rainbow flag because there is a particular increase in hate crime against that community and the police want to stand with people who are and identify as LGBT, that is perfectly fine. What isn't fine is for the police or for police officers to be spending their time trolling through Twitter, trying to prosecute and find hate crimes there, and not doing the things that they should be doing, which is being the bobbies on the beat, tackling crime that affects all of us.
Yes.
So symbolism is absolutely fine, but if it detracts from actually the real day-to-day issues that we all face, then that's when it becomes problematic, and we shouldn't make sure that the two intertwined or overlap.
But I suppose it does detract from the taxpayer's pocket. They're spending an awful lot of money on these crossings, and then they have to retrain police horses because the police horses get upset by the colours. So rather than get rid of the colours, they have to retrain the horses. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot of money spent for no reason.
Well, you can make that case, but I think, look, it doesn't bother me. I will still cross that road, and I'll see it perfectly well.
Yes.
But
don't scuff it because you'll get arrested for a hate crime.
I'll try my best.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Charlie, Rowley, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.